Well, joining me now is retired four-star General Jack Keane, Fox News strategic analyst. General, thank you for being with us. I want to start with Kyiv. All eyes on Kyiv right now. We've seen what's happened in Mariupol. It's been devastating. It seems to be Putin's pattern. What do you expect to see in Kyiv over the next 24, 48 hours?
Well, their forward elements are on the west side of Kyiv, about 17 miles to the northwest of the city. And on the east side of Kyiv, their forward elements are about 30 miles to the northeast of the city. Both of them have been in a fight within the last 24, 36 hours, and they're dealing with their losses and consolidating, and they pause for today. I think the plan is, Brian, that they would lead forces down encircling the city, both on the west and the east side of it. And this is largely done because there's a river that runs right through the middle of the city. And so they don't want to have to be vulnerable to having to cross back and forth all the bridges. So they want forces on both sides of it. And if they're able to encircle the city, and it's questionable, to be frank, Brian, given all the problems they've had, and given the defense that's put up by the Ukrainians, and there's two mechanized Ukrainian brigades that are going to meet them along those axes that they're traveling on, and they've been fighting less than those forces up to now and slowed down. So, but if they're able to complete it as intended, they would encircle it and then hammer it with artillery, because that's what they're bringing forward with their combat forces, rocket and long tube artillery, and hammer it also with aerial bombardment when they're successful. There's some air defense systems there that would take exception to those air bombing attacks. And I think that the siege would then begin of Kyiv, and it would be much more devastating than what we're seeing in Mariupol, and take much longer because of the sheer scale and size of the city itself. And the purpose that the Russians have in mind is to do so much damage to the city, slaughter as many of the people as they can, and we just have to be honest about what this intent is to force Zelenskyy to capitulate without their having to put their forces in the city. If he doesn't capitulate, then they will put their forces in the city. And it'll be very difficult for them because, listen, defending a city favors the defender. Yeah. Because of the obvious. They have all these buildings that they can use for protection, and they've had 2 weeks to prepare for it. This could take weeks, to be honest with you, in terms of where we are. Given the resolve of the Ukrainians, and also given the serious deficiency that the Russian army has displayed.
Okay, so let's talk about the devastation, General, and especially on that point, because the White House is fearing the Russians are going to use chemical and biological weapons. Press Secretary Jen Psaki tweeting, quote, "Now that Russia has made these false claims and China has seemingly endorsed the propaganda, we should all be on the lookout for Russia to possibly use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine or to create a false flag operation using them. It's a clear pattern." Is that going to be a factor with Kyiv? And what does that mean for the people still left in that city if this becomes a chemical, biological warfare operation?
Well, I give the administration a lot of credit here. They've obviously picked up some intelligence and putting that out writ large to the world out there, much as they had done prior to the Russian attack on Ukraine about all the false flag operations and the subterfuge that they were up to. In some respects, I think it helped them to thwart some of the things they were intending to do, and I think that's the administration's motivation. I don't believe it's a given that Russia's going to use chemical and biological weapons. I think they know inherently, if they do, that that's a bit of a game changer, and it brings the potential of NATO forces coming in to do something about that, because it's so offensive to the international community. Remember, Bashar al-Assad did it under the Obama administration, no response. In the Trump administration, we responded with a measured attack, make sure that they weren't going to do it again. We didn't declare war against Syria, and I suspect that is something that NATO, or at least the United States and others, would consider doing. We're not going to declare war on Russia, but we're not going to let them get away with using chemical or biological weapons either, because that is WMD. It's horrific in itself. It's a violation of huge international law, and I don't think we let that stand.
It would be a major complication, to say the least, General. And you're right, it changes the game pretty fundamentally. Let us hope that's not the case, but intel seems to suggest there might be something brewing there. General Jack Keane, always appreciate your thoughts. Thanks for being with us.